opening remarks on the developments so far. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Randeep. Good evening, all. Thank you for joining us this evening. As you're all aware, Prime Minister is on a visit to Tianjin for the SCO summit taking place here. He arrived in Tianjin yesterday evening to a warm reception by the host government and subsequently a very vibrant cultural reception by the Indian community in Tianjin. Prime Minister's first engagement this morning was a bilateral meeting with President Xi Jinping of the People's Republic of China. We've released a statement on that meeting. You would be aware of the details. Let me just fill you in on a couple of aspects of the meeting. As you're aware, this is the second meeting between the two leaders in the space of less than a year. There was their last meeting was in Kazan in October last year, where they had laid down certain strategic guidelines for the development of bilateral relations and set out certain goals to be achieved by the two sides. In their meeting this morning, both the leaders were happy to note the progress that had been registered, the actions that had been taken since the meeting in Kazan, and the momentum that had been maintained in bilateral relations since that meeting, especially in the domain of people-to-people relations. This morning, the leaders shared with each other their perspectives for longer-term growth and development of the two countries. They spoke about their respective understanding of principles for bilateral relations, which it is expected will help guide the future work of the two sides as we work on other aspects of the relationship. For instance, they both agreed that the two countries were primarily focused on their domestic development goals, and in this they were partners rather than rivals. It was also an element of consensus between them that a stable and amicable relationship between India and China can be to the benefit of the 2.8 billion people who live in the two countries. The common interests of the two countries outweigh their differences, and the two leaders also shared a consensus on the fact that differences should not be allowed to be turned into disputes. It was also understood that it is critical that India and China grow and cooperate if there is to be an Asian century and a functioning multipolar world order with a multipolar Asia at its heart. President Xi made four suggestions to further upgrade bilateral relations, namely to strengthen strategic communication and deepen mutual trust, to expand exchanges and cooperation to achieve mutual benefit and win-win results, to accommodate each other's concerns, and finally to strengthen multilateral cooperation to safeguard common interests. And all of these were responded to positively by Prime Minister Modi. The boundary issue also figured in the discussions. Both leaders took note of the successful disengagement last year and the maintenance of peace and tranquility in the border regions since then. In voicing certain principles related to this issue, the Prime Minister underlined the need for peace and tranquility on the border areas for continued and smooth development of bilateral relations. And there was understanding on the need to maintain peace on the borders using the existing mechanisms and avoid disturbances to the overall relationship going forward. At this point, I want to highlight or draw your attention to the outcomes of the 24th round of talks between the special representatives of India and China on the boundary question, which was held in New Delhi less than 2 weeks ago. In their meeting today, both the leaders positively appraised these outcomes and decisions from that round of talks. They encouraged the efforts of the SRs and agreed to accelerate the implementation of the outcomes and the understandings that had been reached between the SRs. They also expressed a commitment to a fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable resolution of the boundary question, proceeding from the political perspective of their overall bilateral relations and in the long-term interests of the two peoples. Amongst other issues, the two leaders also exchanged views on ways to increase and balance bilateral trade, strengthen people-to-people ties, cooperate on trans-border rivers, and jointly fight terrorism. There was a desire to make additional progress on all of these issues on the basis of mutual respect, mutual interests, and mutual sensitivity. In particular, on economic and trade relations, there was recognition of the role that the Indian and the Chinese economies can play in stabilizing world trade. Both leaders underlined the need once again to proceed from a political and strategic direction to reduce their bilateral trade deficit, facilitate bilateral trade and investment ties in both directions, and increase policy transparency and predictability. There was also a discussion on regional and global issues and challenges, including with regard to multilateral platforms. Prime Minister expressed support for China's ongoing presidency of the SCO and the summit in Tianjin. He also invited President Xi to the BRICS summit that India will be hosting in 2026. President Xi thanked Prime Minister for the invitation and offered China's full support to India's BRICS presidency. In addition, following this meeting, Prime Minister had a separate meeting with His Excellency Mr. Tai Chi, who's a member of the Standing Committee of the Politburo of the Communist Party of China. As you are probably aware, Mr. Tsai also holds several important positions in the party. There was originally a proposal from the Chinese side for Mr. Tsai to host a banquet for the Prime Minister on behalf of President Xi Jinping. This was meant as a special gesture to show the importance attached by China to the visit of the Prime Minister, which was taking place after a hiatus of nearly 7 years. However, as there was a scheduling conflict, it was decided to have a brief meeting between Prime Minister and Mr. Tsai. During the meeting, the Prime Minister shared his overall vision for the India-China relationship with Mr. Tsai and sought his involvement and his role to realize the consensus of the two leaders. Mr. Tsai, for his part, reiterated the Chinese side's desire to expand bilateral exchanges in various fields to address our respective concerns in economic areas and to further improve relations in line with the consensus that had been reached between the Prime Minister and the President in their meeting earlier in the morning. Slightly earlier this evening, the Prime Minister also had a bilateral meeting with Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, Chairman of the State Security and Peace Commission of Myanmar. The two leaders recalled their earlier meeting on the sidelines of the BIMSTEC summit in Thailand earlier this year and reviewed their current state of bilateral ties. Prime Minister noted that India attaches great importance to its relations with Myanmar under its Neighborhood First and Act East policies. He underlined the importance of the development partnership between the two countries and sought Senior General Min Aung Hlaing's support for the ongoing connectivity projects between India and Myanmar. There was also a discussion on the security and border issues. Prime Minister welcomed the announcement of elections in Myanmar and stated that dialogue was the only way forward to foster peace and stability in Myanmar. A short while ago in the evening, Prime Minister attended the official reception of the 25th SCO summit hosted by President Xi Jinping for the visiting leaders. Tomorrow, Prime Minister will be addressing the plenary session of the summit, where he will outline India's approach to fostering regional cooperation under the SCO umbrella. After this engagement, he is scheduled to have a bilateral meeting with President Vladimir Putin of Russia, following which he will depart for India. Let me stop here, and I think we have time for a few questions. Thank you.
Okay. So we go from Manish, please.
Foreign Secretary Manish Chand, India Rights Network. My question is about, the ballooning trade deficit, which is close to $100 billion. You spoke about having a balanced economic relationship. What concrete measures, steps were unveiled? Was there any pledge by the Chinese side to step up investment in India? And my second question is that was there any progress on de-escalation if the issue was discussed? And what is the way forward from SR talks? Thank you.
Sudhir.
So, Sudhir Ranjan from Bloomberg, sir. On the border talks, you did mention about the SR level talks. How does it go forward from here? In particular, the issue of delimitation that has been mentioned in the last joint statement.
Uma.
उमा शंकर सिंह, इंडिपेंडेंट जर्नलिस्ट। मेरा सवाल ये है कि चीन की तरफ से जो बयान जारी किया गया है उसमें राष्ट्रपति शी के हवाले से कहा गया है कि उन्होंने प्रधानमंत्री मोदी से ये कहा, और मैं कोट कर रहा हूँ, कि हमें सीमावर्ती क्षेत्रों में शांति और सौहार्द बनाए रखने के लिए मिलकर काम करना चाहिए और सीमा मुद्दे को समग्र चीन भारत संबंधों को परिभाषित नहीं करने देना चाहिए। सवाल ये है कि भारत क्या चीन के इस रुख से जो सहमत है, क्योंकि भारत पहले से कहता रहा है कि 2020 अप्रैल के पहले की यथास्थिति जो है वो पहली शर्त है दोनों देशों के बीच संबंधों को सामान्य करने की।
Siddhant.
Hi sir, Siddhant from WION. Sir, how much was the discussion on the issue of cross-border terrorism, the terrorism emanating from Pakistan during the bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping? And my second question is, Prime Minister mentioned about direct flights as well, announcements. Are we looking at any timetable when in next few months we are looking at direct flights?
Megha.
So I'm Megha Prasad from ABP. My question is about the conversation that President Zelensky had with Prime Minister Modi yesterday. And he puts out on Twitter and he says that while he was talking to Prime Minister, he's also said that Ukraine reaffirms its readiness for a meeting with the head of Russia. Now, Prime Minister is meeting President Putin tomorrow. Is there some sort of an expectation from Ukraine that India would mediate? If yes, what's the stand that India would take in this situation?
So we can take these questions first.
So Manish, to your question on the deficit, yes, it is a fact that there is a large and ongoing trade deficit between India and China. And this has been a matter of discussion over several years. In the current context as well, in fact, this is a discussion that started even when Foreign Minister Wang Yi was in Delhi and meeting with External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar. The issue was raised there as well by us. I would go back to the point that I mentioned in my briefing, which was essentially what the Prime Minister shared with President Xi Jinping today, that it is important also to look at the issue of trade and trade deficit from the broad strategic direction and engagement between the two countries. Growing trade between the two countries and narrowing of the deficit will contribute to a change in perception in the relationship as well. But this is a discussion that is going on at many levels. It's between governments, between businesses, between entities that are involved in the trade, and we will have to see how it evolves going forward. On your question related to de-escalation, I would refer you to the detailed outcome document that was put out after the talks between the SRs. This is a discussion that will go forward in the designated mechanisms between the two sides dealing with these issues. Shruti, this more or less the same goes for your question on how the border talks go forward. You would have again seen the statement that we put out after the SR's talks. You're aware that dedicated mechanisms have been created for taking these talks forward. We expect that these the existing mechanisms, which is the working mechanism for coordination and cooperation in the border areas between India and China, will meet in the coming days and weeks, and the respective leaders of this mechanism from the two sides will come to an understanding on how these mechanisms for the delimitation related talks are going to go forward. उमा, आपका जो प्रश्न था कि जो राष्ट्रपति शी ने कहा है बाउंड्री इश्यूज और द्विपक्षीय संबंधों के बारे में, देखिए मैं सिर्फ इतना कहूँगा कि हम शुरू से मानते आए हैं और अलग अलग स्तर पे हम ये साफ कहते आ रहे हैं कि बाउंड्री पे जो स्थिति होगी वो स्थिति हम उसका जो एक तरह से असर है वो द्विपक्षीय रिश्तों में किसी न किसी तरह देखेंगे, और इसी वजह से सबसे जो एक तरह से इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी है द्विपक्षीय संबंधों के लिए, वो बाउंड्री पे पीस और ट्रैंक्विलिटी मेंटेन करना है. तो ये बात आज बड़े स्पष्ट तरीके से प्रधानमंत्री जी ने भी राष्ट्रपति शी के सामने रखी और हम इसे मान के चलते हैं. Siddhant, on your questions, see, cross-border terrorism was mentioned by the Prime Minister as a priority, and I would add that he did underline the fact that this is something that impacts both India and China, and that it's important, therefore, that we extend understanding and extend support to each other as both of us combat cross-border terrorism. And I would, in fact, like to say that we have received the understanding and cooperation of China as we have dealt with the issue of cross-border terrorism in the context of the ongoing SCO summit. To your question on direct flights, this is something on which the two sides have been engaged quite intensely in recent weeks and months, following the direction and the understanding between the two sides at a higher level earlier this year that this is one of the areas in which we should move forward. Since then, a number of rounds of technical level talks have been held. If I'm not mistaken, there was a civil aviation delegation from India in Beijing earlier this week for further discussions. My understanding is that at a broad level an agreement or a consensus has been reached on restarting direct flights, and this is something that you heard the Prime Minister refer to in his comments this morning. What remains, I think, are certain operational issues and the two sides are in contact with each other. There are issues related to the air services agreement, issues related to scheduling, calendar, etc. My understanding is that these will be addressed in the coming few weeks, and we should see a resumption of direct flights soon after that. Megha, your question on the Prime Minister's conversation with President Zelensky of Ukraine, and I think we have put out an account of the conversation between the Prime Minister and President Zelensky as to how and what will be reflected in the conversation with President Putin. I would at this stage not preempt the conversation that is going to take place tomorrow afternoon. We'll try and update you on the proceedings in that conversation once it takes place tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, Gauri.
So Gauri Dwivedi from NTTV. First question, sir. Did the issue of additional tariffs imposed by the Trump administration figure in the talks in the backdrop of China supporting India's stance? And secondly, with regard to the applications, the Chinese applications that remain blocked in India, has there been any discussion to that effect?
Shubha.
Foreign Secretary Shubhajit Roy here from Indian Express. In the readout, in the Indian statement, I see that it's been framed that India and China are not rivals but partners. How do you square this with the fact and the ground reality that more than 50,000 troops from Indian side and another 50,000 are still deployed and stationed at the India-China border?
Aditya.
Foreign Secretary Aditya Raj Kaul from NDTV. On the cross-border terrorism front, was Pahalgam terror attack, raised here because, there were reports that the terrorists of Lashkar-e-Toiba and TRF were actually holding Chinese equipment, including ultra sets and alpine apps. Apart from that, on the Operation Sindoor front, the Chinese equipment used by the Pakistan Army, what did that also figure? Apart from that, second quick question on Taiwan. Last time there was some kind of a communication gap when Wang Yi visited New Delhi on Taiwan. There was a statement by the foreign ministry here in Beijing. They said that, there was some kind of a change in policy. Is there a change? Would you reiterate India's position on Taiwan? Thank you.
I have a question here.
Colin Murphy from Bloomberg. I just wanted to point out the fourth point by Xi Jinping regarding to the strengthening of multilateral cooperation to safeguard common interests. Can I ask from the Indian perspective what perhaps might be those multilateral organizations that you might be working through, and in particular, what are those common interests? Do they include trade, tariffs, for example? So can you give a little bit more specifics on this point? What's the Indian perspective on President Xi's point? Thank you.
Please. Yeah.
सर मैं अरुण हूँ दूरदर्शन से सर इससे एससीओ समिट के अंदर प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी का कल पार्टिसिपेशन रहेगा तो किस तरह से बेसिकली इंडिया अप्रोच करेगा एससीओ समिट को इस बार क्रॉस बॉर्डर टेररिज्म आतंकवाद जैसे मुद्दे टेरर फाइनेंसिंग जैसे मुद्दे कई मल्टीलैटरल प्लेटफॉर्म पर पहले भी रेज हो चुके हैं लेकिन कल जब प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी होंगे और इंडिया किस तरह से एससीओ समिट को अप्रोच करेगा सर
Okay. On the question related to Gauri's question on tariffs, etc. Look, what I'll say is that the two leaders discussed the international economic situation. They recognize the challenges that flow as a result of what we see happening around us. And the focus of the discussion, I would say, remained in the bilateral domain. Of course, they recognize as I said, they recognize what's happening on the international plane and the challenges it creates, but they tried to, in a sense, see how to leverage that for building greater understanding between themselves and how to, in a sense, take forward the economic and commercial relationship between India and China. in the midst of these evolving challenges. As to your question about the Chinese applications, I don't have any update for you on this at the moment. Perhaps you could refer to the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology in India for this. Shubhajit, your question on squaring the issue of partners, not rivals, with troops at the border. Look, as I said, the formulation of the two countries being partners, not rivals, or as is put somewhat differently, of being opportunities for each other and not challenges. This is the framing of the relationship, and both leaders have done this framing of the relationship. This is what is desired, and this is what they see as the future of the relationship as well. The troops at the border, which are a reality, though I think that is again a situation that has started evolving over the course of the last year as the situation at the borders has become more or is moving towards normalization. That is something that has come about as a result of actions that have been taken at a particular point in time. And that's obviously led to a certain crisis, and it is that crisis that we have dealt with or attempted to deal with over the course of the last 5.5 years. That doesn't change the fact that the two leaders, and not just these two leaders, but previous leaders as well, what they have framed for the medium to long-term future of the relationship, which is that we should try, being the two large neighbors that we are to each other, being two of the largest economies in the world, being the only 2 billion plus population countries in the world, that the future that we should aspire to, the future that we should aim at, the one that we should work towards, is one of partnership and not one of rivalry. Aditya, on your questions related to cross-border terrorism, look, all I'll say is that without going into the specifics, that the issue was discussed. It was raised by the Prime Minister, and he outlined his understanding very, very crisply and very specifically on this issue. As I said, he outlined the fact that this is a scourge that both China and India have been victims of, and India is still combating this menace. And he asked for China's support on this particular issue. And as I said, the Chinese have extended their support in various ways on addressing this issue. As to your question on Taiwan, the answer is quite simple. There is no change in India's position on Taiwan. Kolam's question on the specifics of the two leaders talking about strengthening multilateral cooperation to safeguard common interests. Well, essentially, it's to, if you look at what's happening in the space of global trade, for instance, or multilateral finance, for instance, the understanding really is to do with addressing the deficit in global governance in these institutions that look after world trade or the multilateral financial architecture. Obviously, there is a deficit in how the WTO is working, for instance. There is even a deficit in how the United Nations is working at this point in time. These are obviously common interests for two countries such as India and China that are large actors on the international commercial, economic, and financial stage. And therefore, it is obvious for them to have a certain amount of understanding in strengthening these institutions that were originally tasked with looking at these issues. आपका जो सवाल था SCO को लेके, देखिए SCO की बैठक कल शुरू होने वाली है और मेरा अनुमान है कि SCO के बैठक के बाद हम एक वक्तव्य उसके बारे में निकालेंगे, तो अभी प्रीजज न करें, उसको प्रीएम्प्ट न करें, कल उसके बारे में कुछ समाचार आपको देंगे. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
Thank you, sir. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the close of this press briefing. We shall keep you updated with developments of tomorrow. Thank you.
चीन के तियानजिन से ये सीधा प्रसारण आप देख रहे थे भारतीय विदेश मंत्रालय की प्रेस वार्ता का प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी के चीन दौरे को लेकर, वहां पर जो उनकी द्विपक्षीय बैठकें हुई हैं उसको लेकर, एससीओ समिट को लेकर विदेश मंत्रालय के द्वारा जानकारी दी गई, तमाम सवालों के जवाब भी दिए गए और साथ ही जो बड़ी बात कही गई वो ये कि जो कुछ भी मतभेद हैं उनको रुकावट नहीं बनने दिया जाएगा आपसी रिश्तों को आगे बढ़ाने में। आगे चल करके हम आपको प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी के चीन दौरे